All right, I need you to stop everything, because what I'm about to walk you through is not another incremental update from a war that's become background noise. What happened in the last 72 hours over Iran represents a fundamental shift in this conflict, a shift that the Pentagon is not explaining clearly, that the White House is not addressing publicly, and that the implications for every American service member flying tonight, for every family waiting at home, for every strategic calculation being made in Washington and Tehran are enormous. An American F-15E Strike Eagle has been shot down over Iranian territory. One crew member has been recovered, the other is missing. Right now, as you listen to this, somewhere inside the Islamic Republic of Iran, an American weapons systems officer is either evading capture, hiding, injured, or already in Iranian custody. And two militaries on opposite sides of a war are moving through the same darkness looking for the same person. And the rescue operation that recovered the first crew member? American Black Hawk helicopters, special operations aircraft, were filmed flying so low over Iranian territory that Iranian police on the ground opened fire with their sidearms. Not military anti-aircraft systems, not shoulder-launched missiles, pistols, handguns. And according to U.S. Central Command, those bullets connected. Crew members aboard the rescue helicopter were wounded. Think about what that tells you. Think about how low those helicopters had to be flying, how close to populated areas, how deep inside a hostile country for police officers with pistols to hit a moving military aircraft. That is not a routine operation. That is desperation-level risk. And the United States military accepted that risk because what they were recovering and what they're still searching for is that important. Let me take you through this, all of it. The aircraft, the shoot-down, the rescue, the missing crew member, what Iran wants, what America fears, and why the next 48 hours may determine whether this war remains a controlled air campaign or becomes something far more dangerous and far harder to end. First, the aircraft. Because the choice to fly F-15E Strike Eagles over Iran tells you something critical about what this war actually requires. When most people think of American military aviation, they think of the F-35, the stealth jet, practically invisible to radar, the most expensive weapons program in human history. Or the F-22 Raptor, so advanced the United States refused to export it to any ally. So why is America sending F-15s, a design that first flew in the 1970s, into combat over one of the most heavily defended airspaces on Earth? The answer is payload. The F-15E Strike Eagle isn't a dogfighter. It's a bomber that can fight. Its wings carry more weapons than almost any other jet in the American inventory, more than the F-35, more than the F-22. The reason is simple physics. The moment you hang missiles and bombs on the outside of a stealth aircraft, you destroy its radar invisible profile. Stealth jets carry weapons internally, which limits capacity. The F-15E doesn't need to be invisible. It needs to deliver massive firepower onto ground targets, missile batteries, command centers, air defense installations, military infrastructure, and it does that better than any other aircraft flying today. These jets have reportedly been operating from a Royal Air Force base in Britain, flying strike missions into Iranian territory and returning. The round-trip distance alone tells you the logistical scale of this campaign. And each aircraft carries two crew members. In the front seat, the pilot, who flies the plane. In the rear seat, the weapons systems officer, the WSO, who controls the targeting systems, selects the weapons, designates the targets, and executes the strikes. These aren't just pilots. They're two-person strike teams operating at hundreds of miles per hour over hostile territory. Both crew members were on board when the aircraft went down, both ejected. And that's where this story splits into two very different outcomes. According to CBS News and confirmed by U.S. Central Command, both crew members ejected at roughly the same time. But here's the physics of ejection at combat speed. You don't get to choose where you land. Parachutes drift. Air currents separate. Two people who eject from the same aircraft within seconds of each other can land kilometers apart, depending on altitude, wind speed, and direction at the moment of separation. That's exactly what happened. The two crew members came down in different locations, far enough apart that U.S. Special Operations Forces were able to locate and extract one of them, but not the other. The rescue operation itself was extraordinary and terrifying. U.S. military helicopters. MH-60 Blackhawks, operated by Special Operations Forces, supported by at least one MC-130J Commando II long-range transport, were geolocated deep inside Kogaluya and Boyar Ahmad province, approximately 130 kilometers from the Iraqi border. That is not near the edge of contested airspace. That is deep inside Iran. Deep enough that the operation required flying over populated areas, over Iranian security forces, over terrain that Iranian ground troops know intimately, and American pilots are navigating with maps and night vision. The helicopter that recovered the first crew member took small arms fire during the extraction. Multiple crew members aboard the helicopter were wounded. The aircraft sustained damage. It still managed to land, complete the extraction, and evacuate the rescued aviator. And then it left, with one crew member recovered and one still missing. Now, I need to explain why the missing crew member matters so much. Not just as a human being, though that should be reason enough, but strategically. Because the strategic implications of an American weapons systems officer in Iranian custody are almost impossible to overstate. Go back 15 years to 2011. Iran captured an American RQ-170 Sentinel drone, a stealth surveillance aircraft. They didn't destroy it. They didn't parade it around and forget about it. Iranian engineers spent years taking it apart, studying every component, reverse engineering the technology. And that single captured drone became the foundation of Iran's entire drone weapons program. The Shahed drones that have shown up in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Ukraine, in conflicts across the region, they trace their lineage back to that one aircraft. Now imagine what Iran could extract from a living, trained weapons systems officer, someone who understands in precise operational detail how an F-15E's targeting systems work, what frequencies it communicates on, what countermeasures it deploys, what its electronic warfare capabilities are, what its vulnerabilities are, what the classified mission planning procedures look like, what the rules of engagement specify. That's not just a propaganda victory. That is a potential intelligence coup that could reshape Iran's air defense strategy for the next decade. Every piece of operational knowledge that WSO carries is a window into how the American air campaign functions, and every window gives Iran the ability to adapt, to adjust, to develop countermeasures specifically designed to exploit what they learn. That's why the Blackhawks flew low enough to take pistol fire. That's why special operations teams are operating deep inside hostile territory at night. That's why Israel, which had been conducting its own strike operations, announced a pause in all attacks on Iranian territory, specifically to give the rescue operation room to maneuver. For the first time since the air campaign began 6 weeks ago, the skies over Iran went quiet. Not because the war ended, because finding one person became more important than every other mission on the board. Meanwhile, Iran launched its own operation on the ground. According to Al Jazeera and Axios, Iranian authorities issued a public appeal to civilians in the province where the crew member is believed to have landed. Find the American, turn him over, you will be compensated. That detail is critical for two reasons. First, it tells you Iran doesn't have the crew member yet. If they did, there would be no civilian appeal, no reward offer. The manhunt is real and ongoing. Second, it tells you exactly how much Iran values this individual alive. Not dead, alive. Because a dead American pilot is a headline that fades in a week. A living American prisoner is leverage that can last for years. Now let me walk you through the scenarios that intelligence analysts are mapping right now. Because the outcome of this search, whoever finds this person first, may determine not just one individual's fate, but the trajectory of the entire war. Scenario 1. Iran captures the crew member and goes public. Footage on state television, images broadcast worldwide. This is a direct violation of the Geneva Convention. International law prohibits the public display of prisoners of war. But Iran has done it before, and the diplomatic cost has never been high enough to stop them. If that footage surfaces, the political consequences in Washington would be immediate and severe. Families of service members in front of cameras, Congress fracturing, public opinion, which has been tolerating this conflict at arm's length, suddenly confronted with the human reality of a captured American in enemy hands. Every poll on war support shows the same historical pattern. The American public will tolerate military operations in the abstract, but prisoner footage is one of the fastest mechanisms for turning that tolerance into opposition. Trump would find himself negotiating from desperation, and Iran would set the terms. Scenario 2. Iran captures the crew member and broadcasts footage showing mistreatment or injury. Here the dynamic reverses. Instead of pressuring Washington toward diplomacy, it pressures Washington toward escalation. Congress wouldn't call for negotiations. It would call for retaliation. The public wouldn't demand withdrawal. It would demand punishment. And Trump would lose control of the war's timeline, forced to respond to public fury rather than strategic calculation. This is the scenario analysts describe as most dangerous, not because it's most likely, but because it removes decision-making from the people who are supposed to be in control. The conflict, which the administration has described as targeted and limited, could spiral beyond any planned endpoint. Scenario 3. And this is the one that the Telegraph's intelligence sources believe is most probable. Iran says nothing publicly, no video, no announcement, no confirmation. Instead, a quiet message arrives through diplomatic back channels, the kind that never gets reported until years later in a memoir. It simply says, "We have your crew member. Come talk to us." Iran doesn't need to humiliate America to extract value from this situation. In fact, humiliation closes options that could benefit Tehran far more. In this scenario, a deal gets done quietly. Sanctions relief, a commitment not to target certain infrastructure, a pause in operations near the Strait of Hormuz. Trump announces the missing crew member has been recovered, framing it as a military success. Iran gets what it actually wanted, and the American public never fully understands what was traded. It's not a comfortable scenario, but in the history of US-Iran relations, it's not unprecedented either. Now let me zoom out one more time, because there's a larger shift embedded in the events of the last 72 hours that extends beyond any one crew member, any one aircraft, any one rescue operation. The weapon that brought down the F-15E appears to have been a large, advanced surface-to-air missile system, significantly more capable than what Iran had been deploying in the earlier weeks of this conflict. Defense analysts tracking the engagement believe Iran made a deliberate decision to escalate its air defense posture, to introduce heavy systems that had been held in reserve. And on day one of that escalation, they downed 2 American aircraft inside 24 hours. The F-15E over Iranian territory and an A-10 Thunderbolt near the Strait of Hormuz, whose pilot was recovered safely. 2 aircraft in one day, after 6 weeks of 0 losses. That is not a coincidence. That is a strategic inflection point. The entire American air campaign, 6 weeks of strikes against Iranian military infrastructure, nuclear facilities, command centers, was built on one foundational assumption: that American aircraft could operate over Iranian airspace with acceptable risk. That assumption just changed. Not theoretically, empirically, with wreckage on the ground and a missing crew member somewhere in the Iranian countryside. Every strike mission being planned right now, every sortie being briefed, every pilot strapping in, carries a calculus that didn't exist 72 hours ago. The risk matrix has shifted, and it has shifted in Iran's favor. And then there's the wreckage itself. American military doctrine includes protocols that most people never think about. When a U.S. aircraft goes down in enemy territory, the mission doesn't end with finding the crew. Strike aircraft are also tasked with destroying their own wreckage, specifically to prevent adversaries from accessing sensitive technology. Targeting pods, communications encryption hardware, electronic warfare systems, stealth coding materials on certain components. These are items that hostile intelligence services would pay fortunes to analyze. Whether the United States has successfully sanitized the crash site is currently unknown. Iran has already broadcast photographs of the wreckage. What they've recovered, what they're analyzing, and what they'll learn from it are questions that may take months to answer. But if history is any guide, if the 2011 drone capture is any precedent, what Iran extracts from that wreckage will find its way into their military capabilities for years to come. So here's where we are tonight. Day 42 of the U.S.-Israeli air campaign against Iran. 2 American aircraft lost in a single day. 1 crew member recovered under fire, 1 still missing. Special operations teams operating deep inside Iranian territory. Iran mobilizing civilians to hunt for an American service member. Israel pausing its entire air campaign to give the rescue operation room. And a weapon system capable of downing American fighters that didn't exist in this theater 6 weeks ago, now active and operational. The search is happening right now, in the dark, in hostile terrain, against the clock. And the outcome, whoever finds that weapon systems officer first, will shape everything that follows. The diplomatic options, the military calculus, the political dynamics in Washington, the leverage balance between 2 nations that are already locked in the most dangerous confrontation the Middle East has seen in decades. 2 militaries, same desert, same darkness, same person. What happens when one of them finds him will tell you everything about where this war goes next. If you want to stay ahead of this story, if you want the analysis that explains not just what happened, but what it means for every mission that launches tonight and every decision that gets made tomorrow, subscribe right now, hit the notification bell, share this with everyone who needs to understand the reality of what's unfolding. Because the next 48 hours are critical. And we will be here with the details, the context, and the clarity for every development. Stay safe, stay informed. Talk soon.